Very warm morning to all of you. Mr. Shubhodip Roy. Surprisingly, my left hand got injured before coming to JNU. Mr. Roy has made a very strong point regarding for the motion, that is the citizenship bill, is per se not violative of basic history of the constitution. I don't agree with him, and I'll share my views with you as to how the citizenship completely, the overall scheme of the bill which is proposed to convert into an act is violative of not only basic structure but also Article 14 and secularism per se. Now, Mr. Roy has detailed as to how the Citizenship Act 1955 came into picture. He has missed certain points which I'll share, which I'll rather point out. So, Articles 5 to 11 of the Part 2 of the Constitution deal with citizenship, but this is limited to determination of citizenship of a person at the commencement of the Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court in Shah Muhammad Khan, that is 1969 Supreme Court, laid down that the Constitution deliberately did not lay down a permanent or comprehensive law relating to citizenship in India. The power to enact legislation regarding citizenship subsequent to the commencement of the Constitution was left to the Parliament. This power, however, did not affect the citizenship already acquired by way of the articles mentioned. So in 1955, subsequent to Article 11, under the power given to the legislature in Article 11, the Parliament created an act, that is the Citizenship Act 1955. The Citizenship Act 1955 is per se applicable only for citizenship of individuals born post commencement of the Constitution. It does not apply to people who were born before commencement of the Constitution. Now it provides for acquisition of citizenship in 5 ways that Mr. Roy has shared, that is birth, descent, registration, naturalization, and incorporation of territory. Interestingly, it does not say that religion is also a mode of acquiring citizenship, which it can't say so as well. Now there have been 4 major, now this is what the Citizenship Bill 2016 per se does, introducing religion, injecting religion per se as a mode of citizenship, which was never the intent, and it can't be an intent as well. Now, there have been 4 major amendments to the Citizenship Act 1955. They are the years 1986, 1992, 2003, and 2005 respectively. The 1986 Amendment Act made changes Section 8 of the Act, that is renunciation, and inserted a new section dealing with loss of citizenship on subsequent marriage, and amended the certain Schedule 1 proceedings aspects, etc. 1992 Amendment Act substituted any male person, the expression any male person, for the term any person in Section 4 and 8 with the effect of making them gender neutral. The 2003 Amendment brought significant changes, and the expression illegal immigrant was detailed. It also introduced a new term called an overseas citizen of India, and multiple sections and requirements per se regarding these two were detailed as well. It provided that illegal immigrants would not be granted citizenship, and also made a provision for issuance of national identity cards and maintenance of an identity register, which is called NRC, National Register of Citizenship, which I'll detail as well. It also it excluded all those who are born after 2003 from citizenship if either parent is an illegal immigrant. Then the 2005 Amendment Act dealt with overseas citizenship only. Now, interestingly, it also made changes to the mode of acquisition of citizenship by the Assam Accord Act, which was made in 1985. This accord was a memorandum of settlement between All Assam Students Union, that is ASU, and Assam Gan Sangram Parishad, that is AAGCP, resolving the dispute of influx of foreign nationals into Assam. It drew 3 categories, that of citizens who individually migrated before 1966, foreigners after registration who migrated during 1966 to 1971, and foreigners after registration, that is, and finally illegal immigrants, that is, after 24th November 1971. In 1983, the then Congress government brought in the Illegal Migrants Determination by Tribunals Act, which was to expel certain class of foreigners. It was struck down by the Supreme Court in sometime in 2005 also. It was the reason for striking it down was that it was violative of Article 14 of the Constitution. Now the court also held that the act was violative. It created a state-specific legislation which was not allowed, and did not affirm to the existing procedure under the Foreigners Act, and was insufficient in the detection and deportation of illegal migrants. Now the Citizenship Amendment Bill 2016. Now, this was introduced in the Lok Sabha in July 2016. Since then, it is pending with the Joint Select Committee. Nothing concrete has come out with it. Now, the 2016 bill proposes three major changes. One, it removes the classification of specific religious communities migrating from Muslim majority countries as illegal immigrants. Persons belonging to minority communities as the Hindus, Jain, Sikh, Buddhist, Parsi, Christian from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan would not be treated as illegal immigrants. The resident requirement of 11 years has been proposed to be reduced to 6 years instead of 11 years, and this in reference to the individuals classified in section 2 of the amendment bill. Now, overseas citizens of India will also now proposed to be susceptible to lose their status if they violate any provisions of the Act or any other laws of the country. Now, coming to basic structure. What exactly is basic structure? How did this basic structure how was this inserted into the constitution or the constitutional law or constitutionalism as we know? Now, in Sajjan Singh in 1963, Justice Mudholkar used the expression basic structure for the first time. This was borrowed from Pakistan Supreme Court in a different context altogether. It lay silent till 1973 when in Keshwananda Bharati, the Supreme Court by a majority of 7:6 or as arguably 6.7:6.3 because Justice Khanna's opinion is tilted towards both of them, but in final conclusion he says no. Now the expression basic structure, now interestingly the constitution, how we read constitution is in major two parts. One is the written text of the constitution, that is the act. One is the unwritten text of the constitution, which are majorly conventions, doctrines, that is what something we call doctrinal constitutional law. And the subject of constitution for academic purposes is read together as written and unwritten, both they are read in a conjoint manner. Now the basic structure doctrines expression, basic structure is nowhere in the constitution, we don't find it. It was supplanted by the judiciary, and because of a lot of reasons, the successive failures of governments, and their land reform, a history of land reforms, and they had to bring in something as to control the will of the government. A lot of this theory of the everlasting conflict between the direct will and the indirect will, that is what Montesquieu propagated. Now the representatives of people, that is the people who sit in the parliament, are the direct will because they have been represented by people, they have been elected by people to represent them. The judiciary per se is the indirect will. So this is how basic structure, having a long history, came into being. Basic structure of the constitution has been, a lot of things have been gradually inserted into what is meant by basic structure. As Mr. Roy also pointed out, in S.R. Bomai, secularism was held to be basic structure of the constitution as well. But it was also held that secularism, although inserted in the constitution by way of 42nd Amendment, which is also known as the mini constitution in 1976, but the spirit of the constitution per se was that India was always secular and secularism was always a part of the constitution of India. So this is held in the Kittin Judgments. So coming to how and whether basic structure includes secularism, yes, but basic structure also includes that the objectives specified in the preamble of the constitution also cannot be altered. Now one of the objectives provided in the constitution also is secularism. Now the preamble starts with we the people. That is what Mr. Roy also pointed out, we the people, and this is how I counter his argument. We the people. This is something which is not given to us by anyone else. This is what we give to ourselves. We the people. So now the amendment bill per se injects something. One, religion as a mode of citizenship, which was never the intent and could not ever be an intent. Secondly, coming to secularism, what does secularism mean? Secularism per se, the basic of secularism is that the state has no religion of its own. The state maintains a principled equal distance from all religions, be it minority, be it majority, be it minority in the entire country but majority in a particular state, or anyone else as well. It maintains a principled equal distance of principled non-interference policy per se. Now coming to the constitutional validity of the bill, or the Citizenship Amendment Bill. Now how do you examine whether a particular statute book or a particular provision in any act or particular executive act is violative of the constitution. Now, number one, there is a presumption of constitutionality. Whenever the parliament or the executive, they frame any legislation or any act, there is a presumption that it is considered to be constitutionally valid. Now, if that provision in judicial review, which also Mr. Roy pointed out, the judicial review is permissible under the constitution under 32 and 226. Now, if that particular provision or any sub-clause of that provision or the provision or the act or the bill completely violates any constitutional provision or the basic structure of the constitution or any other provision in any statute book, it can be struck down. Now, Article 14 prescribes, and Article 14 is not the singular equality code. Article 14, 15 and 16 are to be read together and are together called the equality code. So not only Article 14, but also Article 15 and 16 get violated when we bring in something on these lines, which is the Citizenship Amendment Bill. Now further, the Citizenship Amendment Bill, now the eligibility on religion again. The primary flaw with the proposed act is the qualification solely on the basis of religion. Now 6 particularly chosen religions are specified to the exclusion of Muslims, which prima facie fails the test of reasonable classification under Article 14 of the Constitution. There is no reason provided as to the segregation of religions and no rational nexus. This is what the test actually is, which is was revised later on as well. Laid down that how do you interpret something under Article 14? There has to be an intelligible differentia and there has to be a rational nexus with the object sought to be achieved. Subsequently, in E.P. Royappa, the test of arbitrariness was inserted, and recently Justice Nariman has also inserted another test of that is manifestly arbitrary. There is no rational nexus sought to be achieved by this particular amendment. It goes not only against the ideal of secularism, but also against the entire equality code as such. Now, with the reduction in residence requirements, the overall demographic effect of the bill will also be a surge in Hindu population of the country. Now, 4 of 6 mentioned religions are regulated by Hindu laws. Now, like for example, Hindu Marriage Act 1955, it defines a Hindu to also include a Sikh, a Jain, or a Buddhist, while the Muslim community will remain ousted. Further, this classification of protection of religion overall overlooks Muslim minorities facing threats in the neighboring countries as well. International relations, a lot of things are also involved. Another drawback in the act that fails to define key terms that are relevant for its implementation are that the concept of citizenship and nationality have not been distinguished, although the Supreme Court has ruled in a plethora of judgments, that is, Star Trading Corporation, etc., that these terms cannot be used interchangeably. Domicile has been also defined by the courts. Now, interestingly, refugee and illegal migrants, now recently, Mr. Pandey also mentioned that 7 Rohingyas had to be deported. So there was a mention before the Chief Justice's court saying that, okay, please look into it. There was a petition filed as well. So please look into it. And so he says that your left hand is gone, right hand may also go. So there was a mention of the Rohingya dispute before the Chief Justice's court. And Mr. Bhushan argued that this requires judicial consideration, and the answer was an emphatic no. So, and because of these reasons, now refugee is one, illegal migrant is one, migrant is one, domicile is something different, citizenship is something different, nationality is something different. Now the bill omits these. The bill uses the terms interchangeably and proceeds in a manner as if even if you are a nation of some other country, that you can be a citizen of some other, you can't be a citizen of India. It has all jumbled up these things. Now further, another grievous error of classification is between migrants and refugees. While the amendment proposed to call the listed minority as migrants, the term refugee would seem more appropriate. This categorization has profound implications because the laws dealing with migrants and refugees are substantially different. Migration occurs voluntarily, but for better economic prospects or any other reason, the refugee influx is characterized by necessity and specific actual threat. Now, Mr. Roy also mentioned the theory of original intent, or what is called originalism. That Constituent Assembly debates may also be used to, look into the legislative intent behind incorporating, or when there is a challenge to a particular provision. Now, even going back to Constituent Assembly debates as well, that there is this concept of jus soli. So jus soli was to be the governing principle of citizenship in India in accordance with secular values. However, the elements of the sanguinis as reflected in the bill running are completely run counter to the intentions of the constitution framers. So with this, now interestingly, NRC. So NRC is National Register of Citizens. Now the amendment bill completely nullifies NRC, because NRC is currently being updated in the Supreme Court and currently being updated in the state of Assam and Supreme Court to Justices Justice Gogoi and Justice Nariman. A special bench has been constituted. They are monitoring it. The main purpose of NRC is to detect Bangladeshi nationals who may have illegally entered the state after March 24, 1971. That is the cutoff date then in the Assam court. The second draft is yet to be released, while the first updated list was concluded on 31/12/2017. The impact of NRC will be that anyone found to have entered Assam illegally after March 24, 1971, irrespective of the religion, will be deported. The 2016, the current amendment bill, will grant citizenship to non-Muslim refugees, while even NRC is not designed to classify migrants on the basis of their religion. It is violative of Article 14 on this count as well. Further, there is no provision for Muslim sects like Shias and Ahmadiyas, which is a minor argument. But looking at the overall scheme of the bill proposed, and this is, we are at a very premature stage because it is still a bill. It is yet to be debated in the Rajya Sabha and yet to become an act. But the overall scheme of the bill requires a reconsideration, because even if it is passed in the same form as it is today, the Supreme Court will definitely strike it down. So it requires some revision, some reconsideration, touching down the practical realities as well, and to the touchstone of basic structure and Article 4. Thank you so much.